Hello, boys and girls. I'm your Peter Pan storyteller.
This is the story of The Last Starfighter.
This is the story of Gremlins.
This is the story of Tron.
This is the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
This is the story of The Empire Strikes Back.
You can read along with me in your book.
You can follow the story along with me.
Every time you hear this sound,
Turn the pages when you hear this sound.
You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the computer sound like this.
Let's begin now.
Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of When You Hear This Sound, brought to you by the Space Monkey X Audio Workshop. This is your host, Rob Lamley. This week on the show, we're continuing our non-canon Star Wars record series with another in the Further Adventures lineup from Buena Vista Records, Planet of the Hoojibs. Like Droid World, Planet of the Hoojibs is based on an issue of the Marvel Comics' ongoing Star Wars comic book, this time issue number 55, published in 1981. The comic book story was actually called Pliff, with an exclamation point, taking its name from the spokesman for the Hoojib race. But just what is a Hoojib anyway? Hoojibs are, essentially, white, telepathic, energy-consuming bunny rabbits with an antenna on top of their head. A handful of rebel scouts, including Princess Leia and Chewbacca, encounter the Hoojibs on their home planet of Abra, where the rebels are considering establishing a new base after the one on Hoth was destroyed. The comic was written by David Michelini, who got his start in the business in the early 1970s, working on Swamp Thing and Aquaman at DC. In the late 70s, he began writing for Marvel, working on some of the most influential Iron Man issues, like those dealing with Tony Stark's alcoholism, as well as co-creating the character War Machine. From 1978 until 1982, Michelini was one of the writers for The Avengers, where he introduced Ant-Man. And during his run on The Amazing Spider-Man from 1987 until 1994, he co-created Venom and Carnage. This also makes him one of the longest-running writers for Spider-Man, second only to Stan Lee. Since the 1990s, Michelini has bounced between many different publishers, but he's currently back writing for Marvel, most recently on the 2024 limited series Venom Separation Anxiety. Michelini wrote 19 issues of the Star Wars comic, with his longest run being from issue number 55 through number 69. The artwork for issue number 55 was created by Walter Simonson. Simonson started his career in comics after first getting his degree in geology. He had aspirations to be a paleontologist, but decided that writing and drawing comics might be an easier way to make a living. So he signed up for art school and graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design in 1972. During art school, Simonson wrote, penciled, lettered, and inked his own comic, The Star Slammers, which he sold at sci-fi conventions. Simonson has revisited Star Slammers more than once during his career, releasing old and new adventures at various publishers. Shortly after graduation, Simonson picked up freelance work penciling for DC Comics, and later in the 1970s began working with Marvel too. Simonson's best-known work began with Thor number 337, where he took on the roles of both writer and artist for a very influential run on the God of Thunder's book. During his tenure, he introduced the fan-favorite alien Beta Ray Bill, as well as Throg, the frog variant of Thor, who, by the way, was once a human named Simon Walterson. Simonson gave up art duties on Thor with issue number 367, but stayed on as writer until number 382. Later, Simonson joined his wife Louise, a comic book writer, on the title X Factor, where the duo worked on classic storylines like Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutants, and Inferno. Since the 1990s, Simonson has jumped around from various publishers and special projects and is still active in the comic book industry today. Back in the 1970s and 80s, Simonson wrote 10 issues of the Star Wars comic, did the penciling for 19 issues, and drew the covers for 16 issues, including issue number 55. While readers of the comic were introduced to the Hoojib leader Pliff in issue number 55, this story is not the end of Pliff's journey in the Marvel Comics Star Wars universe. Pliff would go on to become the representative of the planet Arbra as part of the Alliance of Free Planets, the transitional government that formed after the Empire fell but before the New Republic was formed. In his capacity as representative, Pliff and Luke Skywalker traveled to a handful of different planets on diplomatic missions where they often got into dangerous situations. Later, Pliff became a military leader under Mon Mothma, who placed him in charge of several Hoojib operatives during the Nagai-Toph Wars. I'd just like to remind you that Hoojibs are white telepathic bunny rabbits with an antenna on top of their heads. As of right now, the Hoojibs have not made the leap from the Star Wars Legends category to official canon, but I think we need to start an online campaign for Dave Filoni to make that happen. Although Walter Simonson was the artist for the Marvel comic that the Planet of the Hoojibs record is based on, Greg Winters provided the artwork for the record book. And I have to say, Winters' work here is amazing. The colors are bright and beautiful, the page compositions are really unique, and his likenesses of Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO are exceptional. Seriously, this is one of my favorite record books. As usual, I've scanned the pages and they're available in the show notes over at spacemonkeyx.net. And with that, let's get to the record. Here is The Further Adventures of Star Wars, Planet of the Hoojibs, released in 1983 by Buena Vista Records. Enjoy.
This is the story of Planet of the Hoojibs. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear R2-D2 beep like this. Let's begin now. Chewbacca skillfully steered the rebel survey ship into orbit around a mysterious planet. Princess Leia studied the lush green land below.
It's called Arbra, Chewie. If our reports are correct, it could be the perfect place for a secret rebel base.
The Wookiee growled a warning. Leia nodded.
Sure, it could be dangerous, but we've been in hairy spots before. No offense, Chewie.
After landing, the rebel survey team mounted their air bikes and began their exploration of Arbra. The golden droid, C-3PO, set about collecting and processing data.
I wish R2 was here to see all this. It's much nicer than that ice planet Hoth.
Princess Leia was encouraged by what she saw.
Good climate, lots of natural resources. The thick growth of trees will give us perfect air cover. And from the looks of it, no dangerous animals. We might have found just what we're looking for. Okay, team, let's make camp here tonight.
The place seemed safe enough, but as the rebels set up camp, they were being carefully watched. The exhausted rebel team settled into their cozy camp. Soon they found themselves overrun by hundreds of the furry, lop-eared creatures that Leia had seen earlier. C-3PO introduced their tiny guests.
They're Hoojibs, Your Highness, natives of this planet. Not very intelligent, I'm afraid.
I think they're adorable.
One particularly playful Hoojib took a liking to Chewbacca, much to his dismay. The little creatures snuggled around the giant Wookiee's neck. Leia couldn't resist teasing.
Why, I think he's adopted you, Chewie. And you thought there was danger here. Now, weren't you wrong?
However, Chewie's instincts had been right. There was danger on the planet, and not even the night patrol could protect the sleeping camp from it. But it was not some horrible terror in the darkness. The danger was in the cute, cuddly Hoojibs that the unsuspecting rebels had befriended. C-3PO was sitting on a tree stump in the shutdown mode when his emergency sensors were activated. He awakened to find hungry Hoojibs feasting on the electronic circuits in his leg.
Ouch! I'm being eaten alive! Help! Oh, someone help me! Shoo! Shoo!
Gimmer, chief of the rebel guards, raced to the rescue.
Code Red! Activate floodlights! Secure the area!
But when the switches were thrown, the huge camp lights failed.
It's those Hoojibs! They're energy eaters! Get them off me!
Sputtered C-3PO. But by the time Gimmer reached the droid, the Hoojibs were scurrying away. Princess Leia watched the fleeing creatures.
We can't let them escape. Chewie, grab one!
The huge Wookiee calmly reached down and scooped up one of the escaping animals. But he was in for a shock when the tiny Hoojib spoke.
Put me down, you great hairy beast.
An amazed Princess Leia was handed the small captive.
Hey, this little guy can talk. But our recon report said that Arbra contained no intelligent life.
The tiny Hoojib huffed a tiny huff.
I am Cliff, my good creature, and I dare say more intelligent than that shaggy beast that grabbed me.
Then tell me why you made a midnight snack out of our power supply.
Yes, we do owe you an explanation. Ages ago, our Hoojib ancestors made their home in a crystal cavern near here. Inside are huge crystals, which draw power from the center of the planet and transform it into pure energy. This is what we live on.
But with so much food at home, why hit us up for dinner?
We were forced out of our home by a beast.
Leia shook her head.
Come on, Pliff, what beast?
That one.
A blast of wind hit the camp as a huge winged beast raged overhead. A writhing mass of tentacles on the underside of the monster's body grabbed up a helpless soldier. Leia drew her laser gun and squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened.
The Hoojibs even drained our blasters!
Gimmer dashed to her side.
I was on guard duty when they hit. Here, my blaster is still charged.
Leia seized the weapon and fired. The stunned beast dropped the soldier and flew away. Pliff shuddered.
It's called the Slivolith. After drifting in space for years, it made its way to our home. We were forced to flee, surviving on any bits of energy we could find.
The princess sighed.
Now we're all in the same boat. We'll have to help you get rid of your unwanted guests so we can recharge our energy supplies.
While Leia and Pliff plotted their strategy, the rest of the rebel team made crude spears. After a forced march through the night, they positioned themselves outside the Hoojibs' cavernous home.
All right, squad, this will be dangerous. Wait, Pliff, where do you think you're going?
Don't let our size fool you. We're going to help win our home back.
The courageous Hoojibs hopped to the mouth of the cave. Once in position, the little creatures taunted the beast with their shrill calls. Something rumbled deep within the cavern. Pliff and his friends made a mad dash for safety. In a flash, the Slivolith hurtled from the cave, sending the Hoojibs tumbling. Leia waited until the beast was right overhead.
All right, now!
A volley of homemade spears took the screeching creature by surprise. While the Slivolith was distracted, Leia scooped up the disabled blasters.
Chewie, Gimmer, let's go! We have to get in the cavern and recharge these things before all those spears are gone!
The three raced for the cave opening while the other rebels bravely continued to battle the beast. Suddenly, there was a shrill cry. Leia spun around. There was Pliff, caught up in one of the monster's waving tentacles. Leia aimed the only working blaster.
Put that Hoojib down!
The shot hit the Slivolith squarely. Pliff dropped unharmed.
Thank you, Leia. I owe you one.
The angry Slivolith turned and swooped at Leia. The princess dashed into the cavern.
I hope Chewie's still in here, or I'm sunk.
She headed for an outcropping of rock as the horrible monster roared into the cave after her. Then Leia tripped and fell helpless before the beast. Suddenly, from behind a rock, Chewbacca leaped up. The giant Wookiee grabbed the beast, halting it in mid-flight. Using the Slivolith's great size against it, Chewie slammed the monster into a wall of razor-sharp energy crystals. An eerie sound, like shattering glass, echoed through the cavern as the Slivolith tumbled helplessly down the tunnel that led to the fiery core of the planet. Cheering rebels and Hoojibs rushed into the cave as Chewbacca gave a victory roar. Then the rebels grew silent as they took their first look at the overwhelming power and beauty of the cavern. The energy crystals glowed with unnatural light. Gimmer whistled softly.
This is perfect. The Empire would never find us here.
Pliff cleared his throat.
May I remind you, sir, this is our home.
Leia smiled sadly.
Pliff's right. The Empire has taken away our homes. We won't do the same to the Hoojibs.
The disappointed rebel troops nodded their agreement.
You're right, Princess. Come on, team. Let's get on with our mission. Sorry, Pliff. Guess we got carried away.
The Hoojibs sadly watched the rebels turn to leave. Finally, Pliff spoke up.
Friendship is what makes a home really a home. And you're welcome to share our home with us.
lay a beam.
Cliff, I think I love you.
After recharging the radio, Leia sent the news to the waiting rebel fleet.
Our recon reports were correct. Location perfect, unlimited energy supply, and total seclusion. But we found something very important that was not in the reports. We found friends.
Thanks for stopping by the show today. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can head over to spacemonkeyx.net for pictures, links, and additional information about this episode, and check out some of the other podcasts presented by the Space Monkey X Audio Workshop. This has been your host, Rob Lamley. Thanks for listening to When You Hear This Sound, the podcast dedicated to the weird and wonderful world of read-along record books and storybook vinyl. I'll see y'all next time.